The first people performing pest control were also the first farmers. Now, I don't have a date for you because this predates even any records of it, but from what we believe, the first farmers didn't actually have the technology to control for insects and keep them away from their crops. So instead, they just increased the number of crops they planted so there was enough for the insects to eat them and enough for them to still have enough food for them to have enough food through the year. So basically, if the insects were consuming 50% of their crops, they would double how many crops they planted so that they could now feed the insects and themselves. These first farmers also were the ones that brought in predators as pets to reduce rodent pests and other animal pests, and they allowed the natural predators to coexist with them. So you would never see one of the first farmers squashing a spider that they found around their home. That would never happen. They saw the value in all of these natural predators. Let's fast forward to 2500 BC, where we saw our first chemical pest control. This was credited to the Sumerians, who were using sulfur to kill insects. Chemical pest control advanced more and more through time, and we see other cultures, notably the Chinese and the Egyptians, using herbs and essential oils to control for insects. Some examples are lavender, chamomile, we have mint, basil. They were also using oils like olive oil and cedar oil. They would place these on the crops to try to prevent insects from settling on the crops. And a lot of these practices are still used today with DIY practices and treatments. Now, around 300 BC, the Chinese discovered phenology, which is the study of recurrent natural events in relation to seasonal climatic changes. What this means is the Chinese began planting their crops to avoid the pest attacks that came around a certain time each year. They were also using natural enemies and introducing them themselves to control for insect pests. In 1101 AD, the Chinese discovered soap as a pesticide. I wanted to add this because I thought this was really interesting, especially as we still see soap suggested as a natural remedy for some insects, kind of like box elder beetles. In the 1600s, though, we really see more serious chemical control come into play, like arsenic, which is toxic for insects, toxic for humans, toxic for everything. Now, in the 1800s, invasive species began to really become a serious problem. This is because human expansion also led to the expanded range of a lot of pests. So notably at this time, I want to talk about the San Jose scale and the Colorado potato beetle. These caused major losses in crop yield. But because of these losses, we established new techniques to try to reduce those losses that we still use today. Kind of like inspections, quarantines, increased general interest in pest control. We also are seeing other pesticides used, like paraspring, which is a mixture of arsenic and copper sulfate. And we start using these pesticides to try to control for the Colorado potato beetle and similar invasive insects. This was really the beginning of the great insecticidal development boom. We have new application equipment, new pesticides, but the issue is that many of them were too expensive, ineffective, hazardous, and pretty much toxic to everything. We also began synthesizing new pesticidal compounds. So instead of just using what was found in nature, we decided to chemically create stuff that would have never existed. Kind of like DDT. So DDT came around in 1939, and I wrote down DDT, what it stands for, so bear with me. Dichloryl diphenyl trichloroethane. Okay, that's DDT. It's a man-made toxic chemical compound that, as we know, was once widely used. And I mean widely. It was the first synthetic insecticide, and we used it to control for insect-borne diseases. It would help protect crops, protect our livestock. It even saved soldiers' lives in World War II from insect-borne diseases.